Hello, this is Mike from Dimensional Walking, and today I'm going to call this one the age of disclosure and the question of accountability. Okay? For decades, the UFO phenomena has hovered at the edges of mainstream discourse, whispered about in fringe communities, debated in academic circles, and investigated by the military and industrial agencies behind closed doors. With the release of documentaries like the recent one on Prime called The Age of Disclosure, the conversation is shifting from speculation to confrontation. If the claims are true, millions of humans have been abducted against their will, and that this is the central question becomes one of accountability. Who bears the responsibility for the suffering, the secrecy, and the silence? UFO subject has always been entangled with power, from the early reports of flying saucers in the 1940s to the modern revelations of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, acknowledged by the Pentagon. Governments have consistently walked a tightrope between denial and quiet investigation. For citizens, this created a paradox. The phenomena are real enough to warrant classified programs, yet too dangerous or destabilizing to be openly admitted. This tension explains why disclosure has taken so long. It is not merely about evidence, it's about consequences. To admit that extraterrestrial or non human intelligence has interacted with humanity is to open a Pandora's box of moral, political, and spiritual questions. Chief, chief among them, what happened to those who claim to have been abducted? Okay. And personally, I think there's been millions of people across the earth that have been abducted by alien beings. Okay. I used to say it was one out of every five people that you walk by probably has been abducted. Okay. By aliens. Okay. Not humans, aliens. I don't know how true exactly that is, but there may be some truth in it in the long run. So, reports of alien abductions surged in the middle 20th century, often dismissed as psychological delusions, sleep paralysis, or cultural myth. Yet the sheer volume of testimonies across continents, cultures, and decades suggests something more complex. Many abductees describe consistent experiences: paralysis, missing time, medical exam, hybridization programs, telepathic communication. Even if a fraction of these accounts are true, then millions of people may have endured this terrible trauma without recognition or justice. The abduction phenomena, whether literal or symbolic, represents a profound violation of human autonomy. It is not simply a matter of curiosity, it's a matter of rights. So, here lies the most explosive allegation that governments, particularly the United States, not only fail to protect its citizens, but may have actively collaborated with non human entities. The theory suggests that technology, advances in propulsion and materials or weaponry, was traded for access to human subjects. Such claims are definitely difficult to prove, but they resonate because they explain the silence. If abductions were merely random acts by uncontrollable force, governments could at least acknowledge the threat. But if they were complete, placid, if they were complicit, they To admit collaboration would be to confess to crimes against humanity. This is why accountability is so central to disclosure. It is, it is not enough to reveal the UFO's existence. The deeper question is whether human institutions betrayed our own populations in pursuit of power. So, skeptics rightly demand evidence. Okay? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Yet the difficulty lies in the nature of the phenomenon. Abductees are often lack physical evidence, memories are fragmented, and official records are classified. Governments have mastered the art of plausible deniability, bearing the programs under layers of secrecy. Still, cracks seem to be appearing. Declassified documents, whistleblower testimony, and Congress congressional hearings have begun to legitimize the conversation. The U.S. government now admits that UAPs are real, though their origin remains unknown. This is, I guess you would call this a seismic shift from the decades of ridicule. It suggests that disclosure is not a matter of if, but when. And I personally think it's now. I think by this documentary, Age of Disclosure, that was it. So make sure you do see it, by the way. So if the world accepts that abductions occurred, the demand for accountability will be unavoidable. Several layers of responsibilities emerge. First of all, governments, did they know? Did they collaborate? Did they fail to protect their citizens? Okay. Institutions such as the military, the intelligence, the scientific bodies that conceal information may face great scrutiny. Okay. And now we got the non-human entities. If abductions were real, how do we conceptualize justice across species or civilizations? Accountability may take many forms: truth commissions, reparations, public apologies, or even international tribunals. The precedent exists. Humanity has confronted crimes against humanity before. The difference here is scale and strangeness. How do you prosecute beings who may not even share our own concept of morality? Beyond politics, the abduction narrative is deeply personal. Survivors often live in silence, stigmatized by disbelief. From a personal level, I'm quite sure I've been abducted. Okay, I can't say that it was a terrible, terrible experience, but still, it's kind of a violation of your body, of your mind, of whatever they were after. So they carry trauma, and I can't say I carry trauma, but many of them do carry trauma without recognition. Their experience dismissed as a fantasy. Disclosure often offers validation, but it also reopens wounds. If society finally acknowledges that their reality, it must also provide healing. Okay? This is where accountability intersects with compassion. It is not enough to assign blame. We must also create pathways for recovery. Counseling, community support, and cultural integration will be essential. Abductions are not merely witnesses, they are victims. The delay in disclosure can be understood by a collision of forces: fear of panic, desire for control, avoidance of responsibility. Governments fear something called destabilization of religions, economics, and geopolitics. They sought to weaponize or exploit alien technology, and they dreaded the moral reckoning that would allow the acknowledgement of abductions. Thus, secrecy became the default. Silence was safer than truth. But history shows that truth eventually surfaces. The age of disclosure represents the tipping point, and we are there. The accumulation of evidence, testimony, and cultural pressure has made denial unattainable. So, in conclusion, if humanity accepts that millions were abducted, the question of accountability will define the next era. Governments will be forced to confront their role, whether through neglect or complicity. Institutions will be scrutinized for decades of secrecy, and society will grapple with the moral implications of contact with non human intelligence. Disclosure is not merely about UFOs in the sky, it is about the justice on the ground. It is about whether humanity can face its own betrayal and demand truth. The age of disclosure is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning of a reckoning. Okay? So there's a lot of stuff there. And I've always thought about this for many years. When it finally came to disclosure, what about those abductees? What about their reality? What about what they have gone through? Okay? Anyways, with all that said, happy trails until we meet again. Bye bye.